Hello all and welcome to Sogeti's 2017 DevOps Hackathon. In our discussion today, we will talk about Sogeti's reference architecture implementation for AWS Jenkins DevOps pipeline. I myself, I'm Namrita Shah. I'm the National Solutions Architect for DevOps here with Sogeti USA. I'm a senior manager with 15 years plus of experience in the IT industry. I have been awarded with the MVP award from Microsoft for 2 consecutive years in C#.NET. I've also been a virtual technology specialist in BizTalk. My email and my LinkedIn profile details are as shown on the screen. Before we continue with our demo and our discussion, I would like to take this moment to say thank you to our Sogeti's One Deliver team based out of India for helping us develop this reference implementation. So thank you very much. For this demo, I have enlisted some of the key steps that we need to keep in mind to develop this AWS Jenkins DevOps pipeline. So let us visit all the key steps. As you see, the first step over here is basically to set up a core repository. For this demo, we are using Bitbucket as our repository, and we will add our application source code and our unit tests to this Bitbucket repository. For this demo, we are using a Java-based application. Along with adding our source code and our unit test, we will also add a file called as bitbucketpipelines.yaml. Essentially, we will be using this YAML file to basically upload our source code as a zip to Amazon S3. Along with the YAML file, we will also be adding pom.xml. And finally, we will set up our local workspace basically to make any code changes and commit them. Now for this demo, we have created a separate VM wherein we have set up a complete dev environment. But if you want, you can certainly create your own local workspace on your laptop or your desktop. So after we have set up our core repository, the next step would be basically to create a Maven project for our application in Jenkins. We will be using this Maven project to build our application. What I have enlisted over here are some key configuration parameters that we need to keep in mind. The first one is regarding the source code management. We need to ensure that we select AWS Code Pipeline as our provider for source code management, as well as the category under it as build. After that, we need to ensure that we set a build trigger to poll SCM and also set polling after regular intervals. Along with setting build triggers, we will also set some of our key build parameters. That would be root pom and goals and options. And finally, we will also set up post build actions. Now for this demo, what we have done is that we have integrated JIRA as a part of this pipeline. And we are using JIRA Test Result Reporter plugin to basically log any bugs in JIRA in case any unit tests fail. So the good part about this plugin is that it has two specific parameters or two specific options at the bottom. First is auto raise any issues, and second is auto resolve any issues. So this essentially helps us in basically creating issues within JIRA if any of the unit tests fail, as well as this same plugin in subsequent runs. Let's say like in my run 1, the unit test failed and hence JIRA created an issue for that particular unit test. But let's say in the subsequent builds or in the subsequent runs for the same application, if that unit test passes, then this plugin will set the status of that bug to resolved. The next step after this is setting up our build environment. So for this demo, we will be using AWS Elastic Beanstalk for provisioning and deployment. So couple of key steps for configuring an application with AWS Elastic Beanstalk is first to create an application in EBS and then eventually create environments for its deployment. And we will look into these configuration details in a little bit, but just keep in mind that the two key steps while using Elastic Beanstalk is first to create your application and then eventually to create environments to deploy your application. The next step would be to create unit tests using Ghost Inspector. Now for this demo, again, we have created some basic unit UI testing tests, which we will look into. But it is totally up to your discretion and how much amount of UI testing is required. You can create your tests accordingly. After performing our UI tests, we will be performing performance tests using BlazeMeter. Now AWS directly integrates with both Ghost Inspector and BlazeMeter. And again, for BlazeMeter over here, we have done some basic performance tests using up to 5 users and for about 3 or 4 minutes to basically ensure that the performance test is completed as soon as possible during the demo. But again, this is configurable. You can set your performance test parameters to your discretion and as per the requirement of your application. Finally, what we will be doing is we will be creating CI/CD pipeline using AWS Code Pipeline. And what I've enlisted over here are the stages of this pipeline. So the first stage for this pipeline would be to fetch source code from Amazon S3. Remember that we are basically uploading our source code to Amazon S3 as a zip file. Okay, so as a part of our pipeline, we will be fetching this source code from Amazon S3. The next step after this would be basically to build our source code using Jenkins. Then after that, once our source code is built, we will deploy our source code in beta environment using Elastic Beanstalk. Now for this demo, we have only created 2 environments. First is the beta environment, which is essentially a dev/QA/beta, and the next is our prod and our pre-prod environments. Now just to keep this pipeline short and kind of time bound, we have only created 2 environments. But if you want, you can certainly set up 4 different environments, each for dev, QA, pre-prod and prod. I mean, that is totally up to your discretion. But for this demo, we have only created 2 environments, beta and prod or pre-prod, as you might say. And both these environments are identical. So after we perform our deployment to a beta environment, the next step would be to perform UI testing using Ghost Inspector. And then finally, after that, we will be performing performance testing using BlazeMeter. Before deploying into prod environment, we will seek manual approval. And once the approval is received, then finally we will perform our deployment to our prod environment. So now these were the key steps that we have looked. So let's switch to our AWS console and look at our pipeline. So this is a pipeline, and essentially all the stages that we just spoke about, they are kind of created over here. So let's revisit them and see. So this is the first stage wherein we fetch our source code from Amazon S3, as you can see. After that is a build stage using Jenkins. Next is our deployment stage to the beta environment using Elastic Beanstalk. Finally, we will be performing some basic UI and performance tests to our code deployed in a beta environment using Ghost Inspector and BlazeMeter. After that, we have basically we are seeking for manual approval, and then finally we are doing a deployment to our production environment. Okay, so these were the key steps. Now, before we execute the pipeline, let's go and look at each of these individual stages and the components and services associated with them. So since the first stage is the source stage, let's go and look at our source code. So I'm going to switch to my dev VM and basically go to my development setup. So this is my dev environment over here, and we have a complete dev setup. As you see, this is my project CG demo, and I'm going to expand it. I have two key folders over here, source and test. Under source, one of the key files is index.jsp. Okay, and basically we will be using this file to make any changes. As you see over here, there is this line, welcome to Sogeti version 4.3. So when we execute the pipeline, we will change or increment the version number. Another file that I would want you to look at is a couple of unit tests that we have created as a part of this demo. So what we have done over here is that, as you see, there are a bunch of unit tests that have been created, and we are using the Mockito framework over here. And essentially what we are trying to do is basically check that how many times a specific function or a method was called. Like over here, we are calling basically a save employee, and then we are checking how many times save employee was called. Similarly, over here, if you see, we are calling remove employee, and then we are basically checking how many times remove employee was called. So over here, if you see, the Mockito verify statement kind of states clearly that this particular function remove employee should have been called only once. So these unit tests, if I change the number from 1 to 2, let's say, then this unit test will fail. And this is true for all the unit tests as a part of this demo. So we will be making some subtle changes over here initially, and try and execute the pipeline in a way that the unit tests kind of fail and it actually creates a bug within JIRA. After that, let's move on and look at bitbucket pipelines.yaml. Now this is a YAML file, and as you see, we have our script right here. Now let's look at the script and understand what this script helps us to do. As you see over here, we are initially performing certain updates and then eventually installing the zip application. After that is done, we are running the pip module over here to install Boto 3 version 1.3.0. This will eventually be used by our s3 upload.py over here. But yeah, before we reach there, we need to ensure that Boto 3 version 1.3.0 has been installed. So the first step over here as a part of creating a zip is basically to create a zip for our for all the content within the source folder. As you see, we are creating a zip file named bb_cd_demo.zip, and then if after we add our source files, we are adding a pom.xml to it as well. And finally, in line number 19 over here, as you see, we are essentially using s3 upload.py to basically upload our zip file to AWS bucket bbcd demo over here, and we are creating a file also with the same name, bbcd_demo.zip. Okay, so this kind of completes looking at all the key files of our source code. Along with our source code being set up over here, we also have set up for source tree, which will essentially help us in committing and pushing changes to our repository. Now let's go and take a look at our repository over here. So this is our repository. As you see, we have a bunch of commits over here, and if I click on source, essentially we will see the source folder and all the files that we just saw, including our YAML file, our POM file, S3 load py, and all our source files under the source folder. So every time we make a commit, we will see that the new commit has been made here, and a new commit row with a new ref commit reference number has been created. Okay, so we looked at our source code. We also looked at our source code repository, and we also looked at our local workspace. So we will come back to this workspace eventually and make some changes to trigger the pipeline. But before we do that, let's look at some other components. So since we are using JIRA essentially to log any failed unit tests, this is our JIRA setup over here. Okay, and as you see, you can see that I have a couple of bugs created over here, 25, 26, and 27 for some unit tests that have failed in the past runs. So we have a basic setup over here for JIRA, and all that we are doing is that we are just logging or creating a bug over here. So if I click on this bug, and let's move this a little, and you will see that basically get employee ID, okay, was called only once, but it was wanted or it was expected to be called twice, but it was called only once. So as I showed you that by making some subtle changes to our unit tests, we will execute these unit tests in a fail mode first, and then eventually run them as a success. Okay, so after looking at JIRA, let's go back to our pipeline and see what's there in the next step. The next step is the build step, and as you see, we are using Jenkins to build. So let's go back and look at our Jenkins configuration. Okay, so this is our project over here, cd AWS CP underscore demo. Okay, and let's look at the configuration of this project. Okay. So as you see, this is our project name, our project description, and in case multiple builds are triggered, you just want to ensure that you have checked execute concurrent builds if necessary. Now under source code management, as mentioned under our key steps, we are selecting AWS code pipeline, and for that we have selected a region as US_East_1, and the most important part over here is the AWS key and AWS access key and AWS secret key. Now these are nothing else but the access key and the secret key of your IAM user. Okay, before we do a build, we want to clear the workspace, so we have checked that. And yes, the category over here that is going to be selected is going to be build. Now we have also given a name over here for our provider and also provided a version number. Now ensure that whatever name that you provide or you give over here for your Jenkins provider, remember that name. You need to remember that name, and along with that name you need to remember the version number, because when you go and configure your CI/CD pipeline in your AWS code pipeline, you will need to select the same provider and the same version. Okay, Now under build triggers, we are using poll SCM, and as you see for this demo, we are polling our source code management almost every minute, and that is just for demo purposes. Again, you can set this to your desired time interval, but just so that the demo moves further ahead quickly, we are kind of polling SCM every minute. Okay, so these are our build parameters over here. As you see, we have set our root pom as pom.xml and our goals and options as clean and install. Okay. Now, since we are logging bugs in JIRA every time our unit test fails, we are using this JIRA test result reporter plugin. Now, as you see, we have put in our project JIRA project key over here, and also we have mentioned the issue type that should be created if the unit tests fail. So as you see, uh, the two key checkboxes have been checked. Essentially, that is to auto raise issues and auto resolve issues. So in this case, every time our unit test fails, this JIRA test result reporter plugin will create a bug within our JIRA project automatically, because auto raise issues has been checked, and it's also expected to auto resolve issues once the unit tests succeed. Just one piece of caution over here. Although I have seen that auto raise issues work smoothly and pretty much time, I've never had any failure or anything of raising issues within JIRA. But sometimes what I have observed is that the auto resolve issues, it doesn't work. It does not auto resolve issues for whatsoever reason. It looks like some kind of a bug. But again, feel free to try at your end and let us know how it works for you. Okay, these configurations are pretty much not used. Okay, so after looking at our Jenkins, the next step would be to look at our Elastic Beanstalk application and their environments. So let's go there. So as you see, this is our application that we have created, DuPont, and these are the two environments that we have created. This is a beta environment, which is essentially a dev and QA, and this is a pre-prod and prod environment. Both these environments for this demo are completely identical except for the URL. As you see, the URL over here for our CD and our beta environment is as follows, and for a pre-prod environment is DuPont pre-production. Now, as I mentioned earlier as well, for this demo we are only using two environments, but feel free to create additional environments if you feel so for dev, QA, pre-prod and prod. So in total you can still have about 4 environments or 5 environments depending upon your choice. So let's look at the environment details. So as you see, the health of the our environment is pretty good. It's okay, it's healthy. The configuration or the AMI that we are using is a 64-bit Amazon 2016 Linux with Tomcat 8 and Java 8. Okay, now let's look at the configuration. Now as you see, for this demo we are using the environment type as single instance and the instance type as T1 micro, and this is the URL for this environment over here. Now let's look at the logs. As you see, there are not any logs created. Again, the health of the environment is pretty good. We have some basic monitoring setup. Currently the CPU utilization is 19.2%, and network in is 8 MB and network out is 205 KB. There are no alarms set, no managed updates. We do have a bunch of events being listed over here, and these are typically the events when you deploy or when there are any health checks, etc., that you will see. As you see, it's kind of a trace over here. And finally, we have a bunch of tags that are associated with this environment. Now let's look at our beta environment. This is our application, and this is currently deployed over here. As you see, the version number is 4.3. And just like how we have our beta or a QA environment, similarly we have a pre-prod environment as well. As you see, the configuration is identical except for the URL. So if I click on this URL, it will take me basically to the configuration details, and then finally when you click on the URL over there on the top, you can essentially go to the application deployed on this environment. So as you see, we have version 4.3 deployed right now in our prod and pre-prod environments. Okay. So after looking at Elastic Beanstalk, the next service that we should look at is S3. Now remember, for this pipeline, what we are doing is that we are basically creating a zip file and then uploading that zip file to Amazon S3. Okay, so this is our bucket over here, Bitbucket AWS CD, and in this bucket we are basically uploading our zip file. As you see, it has just been uploaded a few minutes back, probably around 10:53 p.m. Right now it is about 11:38 p.m. so this was probably one of my previous runs. Okay, so I believe we have looked at S3 EBS pipeline. Now let's look at our EC2 instances. Okay, so for deployment of this application, we have created a single instance each. If you remember, our environment type was single instance in our EBS configuration. So both these EC2 instances are identical, just like how both our beta and pre-prod environments are identical in nature. So let's look at one of these EC2 instance configurations. As you see, this is essentially a T1 micro instance type. It has an elastic IP associated to it. We have a security group. The AMI ID is, I believe this is Amazon Linux. Okay, it is I think 64-bit if I'm not wrong, and it has Tomcat 8 and Java 8 on it. And yep, this is the public IP, which is the elastic IP, and we have a couple of private IPs. I mean, anyways, all EC2 instances will always have a private IP associated to them. Okay, so this was the configuration of our EC2 instance, and both our beta and prod instances have similar configuration. So the next thing that we will look at is our UI testing in Ghost Inspector. Now for this demo, again, we have created this test suite, AWS bb_cd_demo, and under that we have created this test called as UPD SOC test, which has nothing but bunch of tests being configured over here, as you see. And again, I mean, these are just some basic simple tests that we have created. It is totally up to your discretion what you would like to test, from a simple assertion to basically validating content on your website, just to ensure that nothing has changed and everything is where it should be. So this is our demo test that we have created, and we will be executing this test as a part of our pipeline. So this is our basic UI testing. Along with our basic UI testing, we are also doing performance testing. So let's go and look at our test suite and Blaze meter. So this is our CD demo URL test over here that we will be executing as a part of our pipeline. So let's go and look at its configuration. Okay, so this is the configuration. As you see, it basically goes to our QA/beta environment URL over here, and what we are trying to do is essentially do a performance test for 5 users with a ramp up time of 300 seconds, performing about 45 iterations for a duration of 2 minutes with a delay of 2500 milliseconds. So this is a pretty simple URL based performance testing, and again it is up to your discretion what tests you want to create, but just to keep things simple over here, we have just created a simple URL test. So this, I believe, kind of completes all our basic configuration of our services and components. So now let's do one thing. Let us execute the pipeline by making subtle code changes. So let me switch back to my dev environment over here. And what we will do is, first we will do a negative test. That essentially means is we will change our version of our application, and along with that we will also ensure that one of the unit tests fails. Okay, so let me go to my index.jsp and let's change this version from 4.3 to 4.4. Our changes, and then let's go to our test over here, and okay, let's change this test, which is update employee. Okay, so we will change this test to check if this particular method has been called twice instead of one, but we know that it has just been called one, so this test will fail. Okay, so let's go to source tree, and as you see, we do have certain uncommitted changes, basically changes in index.jsp and also changes in employee controller test Java, wherein we have changed our verification from 1 to 2. So let us stage all these changes. Okay, and after our changes have been staged, we can commit our changes to our local repository first. To 4.3. Okay, so let's commit our changes locally over here, and once our changes are committed locally, we will push them to our code repository, which is Bitbucket. So essentially, with the click of the push button over here, it is going to trigger our pipeline. Okay, so let's click on push, and our changes will now be pushed to our Bitbucket repository. So let's see what is our commit number. As you see, this is our commit number over here, so 9F9. Okay, so let's go to Bitbucket now, and I'm going to refresh this, and as you see, 9F9, which is our commit number, and basically the message has also has also come in over here, that is change the version number to 4. It should be actually 4.4. I think we changed it to 4.4. So sorry, by mistake I wrote 4.3, but it has been changed to 4.4 if you go back and look at the changes. So yeah, we have changed it to 4.4 as you see here. Okay, so since our changes have been committed now to Bitbucket, the next thing that will happen is that it will actually trigger our pipeline. In fact, it has already triggered our pipeline. So right now what it is doing is it is fetching our source code from Amazon S3. And once our source code is fetched from Amazon S3, it will trigger the build. Now remember, in this case our build should fail because we have configured one of our unit tests to fail and to also log in a bug within JIRA for that particular unit test. So now as you see, our build is currently in progress, and if we switch to Jenkins, let's go to Jenkins. Okay, and if we go to our application, and you will see that this build 122 is currently in progress. Just a few more minutes. So as expected, our build has failed. Now if I click on this, it will tell that a test update user test has failed, which was the test that we wanted to fail as well. And if I click on this, it will show me the details. As you see that it was expecting it to be called twice, but it was only called once. Now along with this, we want to ensure that our bug in JIRA has been created. So let's go and see the test result, and as you see, we have a new bug in JIRA created with AW30. So let's go to JIRA and let's see if a bug has been created. So I'm going to refresh this page now, and as you see, we have a new bug over here that has been created for our test update user function, or unit test essentially, that failed because it was only called once, while the unit test verification was expecting it to be called twice. Okay, so now this was our initial first run wherein we ran our pipeline to to create a bug within JIRA. And because our build failed, our pipeline should have also failed. There it is, our pipeline has failed now. So as a part of next step, what we will do now is we will go back and we will fix our unit tests. Okay, and we will check in this code. Okay, so I'm going to, as you see, I've changed it from 2 to 1. So now this unit test should clear. I'm going to stage all my changes, and then I am going to commit them locally. Changed unit test verification number to 1. Okay, so let's check in our changes locally first, and then push our changes to our repository. Now again, immediately after our changes are pushed to our repository, our pipeline will trigger again, but this time our pipeline will succeed. It will move further ahead with deployment because our unit tests are not going to fail. So as you see, this is our new commit number, and let's go and look at Bitbucket to see if this was checked in. Okay, so there it is. Change unit test verification number to 1. So our changes have been checked in and our pipeline should trigger in no time. So let us now go back to our pipeline and let me refresh this. Okay, as you see, our pipeline is currently in progress and it is currently fetching the zip version of our source code from Amazon S3. So let's give it a few more minutes and then eventually this stage will be complete. It takes about a few minutes, but it should be done pretty quickly. Okay, so that stage has completed and now our build will be triggered. As you see, it has turned blue, so it will trigger now. Okay, so let us go and look at our Jenkins to see if the build has triggered. So back to project. Okay, so shortly we should see a build happening over here. As you see, the last build was at 9:17 a.m. It's currently 9:22 on this box. So we should have a build trigger shortly. Okay, it's taking a little time. Okay, so there you see our build has started and this time our build should succeed. Okay, so our build has succeeded. Okay, so we'll give our pipeline a couple of minutes basically to complete this stage, and you will see that after our build stage is completed, it will move on with deployment to a beta environment. So as you see, currently in our beta environment, this is a beta environment, we have version 4.3 over here. Once our application is deployed over here successfully, this will change to version 4.4. So let's just wait for a few minutes for our application to be deployed. Should take about a minute more. Okay, I think now it's a good chance to go and let's refresh this. So if our application has been deployed successfully, then this will change to version 4.4. Since it's taking a little while, I assume that the deployment is still currently in progress. Okay. So let's give it some more time. Okay. Okay. So our application has been deployed. As you see, we have version 4.4 deployed now in our QA environment. So next stage over here as a part of our pipeline is basically to test. So we are doing two types of testing. First is our UI testing using Ghost Inspector, and second is performance testing using Blaze Meter. So right now, as you see, both these tests are in progress. So if we basically click on this, it will tell us that our test is currently running. As you see, the status is running, and in a few minutes these tests should be completed, and the status will change to passed, as you can see. So our UI tests were successful. Okay, and now let's wait for a few more minutes for the performance test to complete. But what we can do is we can click on Blaze Meter, and then as you see, this currently cd demo URL test, this is currently being executed. So if I click on this, it will basically it is working on starting our test. So our test should start in a little bit. Okay, so as you see, our test is currently in progress. It takes about 3 to 4 minutes. So in 3 to 4 minutes this will be completed. Okay, so as you see, a Ghost Inspector testing has been completed successfully, and a Blaze Meter testing is currently in progress. So once our Blaze Meter testing is complete, then we will provide pre-approval for further deployment. Now as you see, there's a detailed link that has come at the bottom. So if you click on that, it will tell you that what is currently going on. So 1 minute has gone, 2 minutes are still remaining, and our response time is basically average response time is 11.39 milliseconds, and 90% of the time it was about 10 milliseconds, which is pretty good. So overall our test was successful, and it is almost about to be completed anytime. Okay, so it takes about 3 or 4 minutes to complete this, so let's wait. Okay, almost there, a few more minutes. Okay, it's about 4 minutes, so probably a couple of minutes more. Okay. Okay, let's go back and see if our test has completed. Okay, it's saying anytime now, so should be there soon. Sorry, yeah, almost there, guys. Just bear with me for a couple of more minutes, and it should be completed anytime soon now. It's almost there. Okay, so it's already completed 3 minutes, so hopefully it should end now. Okay, almost there. Again. Okay, let's go and look at a pipeline. It's about 5 minutes, so yeah, it should be done. So let's just wait. Okay, looks like a minute more. Okay. Okay, anytime now. Okay, 4 minutes. And hopefully it is completed now. So, because we've configured it not to go beyond 5 minutes for this demo so that we can move further ahead. So hopefully this is completed soon. Okay, this is almost 4 minutes. Let's go back to our pipeline. It's saying it's been about 6 minutes. Okay. Oh, okay. So finally our tests have been completed and our test was successful as well. It took about 4 minutes, which is not bad. Okay, so since our tests have completed, so slowly in a minute or so, this stage will also be completed, and we will move further ahead with manual approval and eventually deployment into our production environment. So give it a minute more to refresh, guys. Just bear with me, and then we should be able to provide manual approval. Okay, almost there. Okay, so our both UI and performance tests have completed. So what I'm going to do over here now is to give an approval saying approved, and immediately after we provide this approval, our application will be deployed in our pre-prod/prod environment. So let me approve this. And if I go right now to our, as you see, this is a pre-prod/prod environment. Over here we have version, we have an older version 4.2. So sorry, we have 4.3. And after our pipeline executes, we should have version 4.4 deployed to our production environment. So our manual pre-approval stage is completed, and now our production or deployment stage will initiate. So there, our production deployment stage has initiated. Okay, so our production deployment is currently in progress. Let us refresh and see if we have something coming up over here. Looks like it's still deploying. Okay, this is our QA stage. So our production deployment is still in progress. Okay, it's still working as you see. Okay, so we'll give it a couple of minutes over here to deploy the application in pre-prod. So as you see, our application has been deployed in a pre-prod/prod environment. As you see, the version number is 4.4 now. So we have successfully deployed our application in our production environment. Okay, so our entire pipeline, as you see, has successfully executed from beginning to the end. So now, since you have seen the pipeline in action, it would make sense to go and look at the configuration details for this particular pipeline. So what I'll do is I will put this pipeline in an edit mode. Okay, and we will review the configuration for each of these stages. So as you see, the first stage over here is Amazon S3. So if I click on this pencil, you will see that the action category is source. Source provider is Amazon S3, and this is our Amazon S3 bucket location where our file is kept. This is basically the key to that particular Amazon S3 location. Okay, now as you see, the output artifact over here is my app, which is nothing else but the zipped version or our source code zipped and uploaded to Amazon S3. Now after we get our source code from Amazon S3, the next step is to build. So let's look at the configuration parameters over here. As you see, the action category is build, and the build provider is AWS CP Jenkins version 1. Now if you remember, when we were going through our Jenkins setup, and I would encourage you to actually rewind back and go back to that part of the video, I had specifically mentioned to you to remember the name of your Jenkins provider as well as the version number. Now as you see, you can actually see several other providers over here, and you need to ensure that you are right in selecting the correct provider. Okay, so this is our provider for this demo. We have given a project name, and definitely the input artifact to this will be my app that we got from Amazon S3. Along with that, we will also have an output artifact, which is nothing else but our built application. So as you see, my input artifact over here is my app, and my output artifact over here is my app build, which is nothing else but my built application. Okay. After we build our application using Amazon S3, the next thing will be to deploy it in a beta environment using Elastic Beanstalk. Okay, so as you see, the configuration, the action category over here is deploy. The deployment provider is AWS Elastic Beanstalk. The application name is DuPont, and the environment name is CD AWS CP BB underscore environment, which is nothing else but our beta environment. Now again, for EBS, we had created an application, and under that application we had created 2 environments. So since this is deployment to the beta environment, we have selected a beta environment name over here, and the input artifact to this stage of the pipeline is nothing else but our built application. So as you see, my input artifact over here is my app build, which is nothing else but the output artifact of our build stage using Jenkins. Okay, after we build our application in the beta environment, the next stage over here is basically to perform UI testing and BlazeMeter based performance testing. So let's look at the configuration for UI testing. As you see, the action name over here, action category is test. Action name is also test, and the test provider is Ghost Inspector UI testing. Now, Ghost Inspector kind of directly integrates with AWS, which is a good thing. So all that you need to do is basically just connect to your account. So in this case, since this pipeline was developed earlier, what we will do is we will click on reconnect. So when you click on reconnect, it will actually take you to this page wherein it hosts all its integration suites and its integration tests. So the integration suite that we are using for this demo is AWS BB CD demo, and the test is UPD SOC test. So all that we need to do is basically select either the entire suite or the test, and the moment you do that, it will actually go back over here and set up your test ID. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this. After we have set up our Ghost Inspector UI testing, the next step would be perf test, which is using BlazeMeter. So as you see, the action category is test and the test provider is BlazeMeter. And just like our Ghost Inspector test, we have a reconnect button over here. So if we click on that, it will take us to BlazeMeter URL, and the test that we are using for this demo is CD demo URL test, which is a simple URL test that we are performing using 5 users. So all that we need to do is click on this test, and basically once you click on your test, it will bring you back to this edit action dialog, and you will see that the test ID is reflected here. Okay. Finally, the last 2 stages of the pipeline, which is the manual approval. So as you see, we are seeking approval and the approval type is manual over here. And finally is our last stage, that is to deploy in production environment. So if I click on Elastic Beanstalk over, or the pen over there, sorry, you will see that the action category is deploy, but the deployment provider this time is also AWS Elastic Beanstalk, but the environment name is DuPont Preprod. Now remember that the initial deployment was in our beta environment. This deployment is in our preprod/prod environment. So although the deployment provider is the same, that which is Elastic Beanstalk, the environment name will be different. The environment name that we have given over here is our preprod environment name. Okay, and again, the input artifact to this will be my app build, which was the output artifact of our build stage. Okay, so I guess this completes our pipeline over here. So as a part of our discussion today, we kind of revisited all the key steps. Then we looked at the pipeline. We demoed the pipeline first with a negative scenario, then with a positive scenario, and then finally we looked at all the configuration settings of our pipeline. So I hope that you have enjoyed this demo. Please feel free to give us your feedback, and thank you for spending your time looking at this demo. Hopefully this demo is helpful to you during the hackathon, especially understanding the Sogeti reference architecture piece. So thank you very much, and have a nice day.